The bass player shtick has been beaten to death. Come on, man, get some new material and just let it go.
The guy with the last name Fettuccine wants me to start making new jokes. Dude, I thought Frigger was like the world's worst last name. You really want me to write new jokes? Seriously? I am so sorry you got your noodles in a twist over this, but I promise you this. When bass players finally learn to stop drooling all over themselves, I will write some new jokes. Greetings, everyone. Fuck the salutations. Welcome to SMG Viewers Comments, my weekly show where I try and answer your comments, questions, and feeble attempts to sound witty to the best of my ability. You've got a comment or a question about recording, being in a band, tuning instruments, maintenance, any of that shit, let me know. Leave a comment below. I try and read every single one of them, and I try to reply to as many as I possibly can as well. That being said, let's get right to it.
Hey Glenn, I'm Francisco from Portugal. One question about recording drums and samples. In a tight situation where the drums are not optimally recorded and sound, well, rather poorly, would you rather have poorly recorded drums highly edited and mixed, or having them blended with samples and maybe lose some of the original drum sound? Cheers.
Hey Francisco, thanks so much for sending in that video question. Now, if you guys are watching the show and you want to be on, follow the link in the description below for SMG Viewers Comments video submissions. I'd love to put you on the show. Just a caveat, if you're gonna send me a Google Drive link, make sure I have permissions to actually access the file. It just kind of makes things move along a whole lot quicker. Now, Francisco, to your question, should I sample replace, should I timeline? Well, if your recording is shit, sometimes you just don't have an option. Now, me personally, I've always considered sample replacement to be a last resort, not a first resort, but sometimes you're just given a giant shit sandwich and you gotta take a bite. And so you have to do replacement. So ultimately you need to make the record sound as best as it possibly can. So if you got a timeline a little bit, okay, sure, whatever. The trick is to not overdo it, to exercise a little bit of restraint. And I think that's something sorely lacking on a lot of modern metal productions these days, is that there's so much editing going on, there's so much sample replacement going on that we're just not hearing the drummer anymore. They're just being completely censored out of the recording. Now, I'd like to bring a little bit more of that chaos back into modern metal. See, that's the thing. If I could compare it with something, I could compare it to perfume. See, because perfume isn't all just sweet smells. There's a little bit of shit mixed in there, and that's what gives it its character. So when it comes to making your music, don't make it all sweet. Give it a little shit.
Hey Glenn, I have these two rigs here that I want to mic with, but for some reason I'm getting clashing in the high frequencies. It sounds like these two rigs really aren't playing well together. Is there some advice or some tools that you could use on how to diagnose where the frequencies are clashing and how to correct them?
Hey Sound Dude, that's a fantastic question, and fortunately there is a very easy fix for your problem. See, just by watching that video, I can tell you've got a massive problem with reflections going on in your room. You've got a lot of hard surfaces and the sound is bouncing around all over the place. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself a couple of these packing blankets from Amazon. You can get like 2 for like 30 bucks or something like that. And you want to build a tent around your cabinets to keep those high-end reflections from bouncing off the wall and back into your mics out of phase. That's what's causing most of your problem. The other thing I'm noticing is that your cabinets are sitting parallel to the wall behind them. And since most rooms are square, I'm going to take a wild guess that the wall that they're facing is also directly parallel. Now, this is my setup here. I'm standing parallel to the wall, and you see the cabinets are angled. This way, they're not reflecting directly back at themselves. Ultimately, you want to have your cabinets at an angle of about 12 degrees or greater, and that way it breaks up standing waves. The sound will bounce around the room, but not just directly back into the mic. So try that. Get yourself a couple of these and try tilting your cabinet 12 degrees off the wall on the back. That should tighten things up considerably for you. Good luck, man.
Glenn, my God, those drums! Oh, and gonna order that neural quad thing as well. Thanks for the review I've been waiting for.
Obviously, you're referencing the neural quad Cortex demo that I did a few weeks back. He's talking about this mix here. Yeah, glad you enjoyed it. Again, I really enjoyed that quad Cortex. The amp sim technology is starting to get really good these days. It's very impressive stuff, and gotta say, when it comes to interface, I really dig that quad Cortex. It's pretty damn impressive. Certainly worth getting excited about, that's for sure, if you're in the home recording market. I mean, seriously, wow. That is some seriously killer gear, and takes a lot of the guesswork out of how to get great guitar tones.
Do I need an impulse response for guitar amp sims?
Hey Robert, thanks for writing in. The shorter answer is maybe. Like if you're using the free Ignite Emissary, yeah, you're gonna need an IR loader, you're gonna need some impulse responses, that's for sure. I recommend checking out some of the Lancaster stuff. But if you say grab Amped Roots from ML Sound Labs, it comes with like at least one free IR. You can jam through that, and that's pretty cool. I mean, an impulse response is going to give you much more options when it comes to tone, though, because the most important thing that affects your guitar sound is the speaker that it's going through, and different speakers have different sounds, and different impulses use different microphones, so you can suddenly get thousands upon thousands of combinations and create, mix and match these different impulses and create your own sound as well. So it's definitely something worth getting into. Most amp sims will have a couple of rudimentary, if not basic, impulse responses on there, and there are some really cool libraries out there up for grabs as well. Definitely worth taking a look at. It's definitely worth getting into, because I think you're really going to enjoy what you get.
Is it that hard to get a good bass tone? Every time I've gone to record, the producer engineer has insisted on using plugins for my sound, and I've been using SVTCL and Sans amps. I've never heard any complaints about my live sound. I'm all disconfoculated.
No, there are some amazing bass amp sim plugins, though. That's the thing. It's a lot easier to do a convincing bass tone through a plugin than a guitar amp, to be honest with you. That's my thoughts on it anyway. It's not saying I don't like live amps. I've still got this Hartkey rig sitting over here that I'm working on a review for. It's absolutely fucking killer. There's nothing wrong with miking up a bass amp in a 4x10 as well. It's really easy to get a great bass tone. Just play the bass correctly and put new strings on it. It's usually a recipe for success, in my opinion. I mean, but a lot of major label records will record a bass direct, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with miking up a bass amp as well. The idea is maybe try a couple different things, and if you're in the studio and you got a Sans amp and the guy wants to use a plugin, maybe have the engineer split the signal. You can use the Sans amp, he can use a plugin, and then you guys can mix and match and hopefully come up with something new. It's definitely worth giving it a shot anyway.
Mora never said how or where to get these plugins. What the fuck?
Oh, you are referencing the SSL plugins review that I did a couple weeks back. In fact, I did say exactly where to get the plugins, but I always love when Morons write in to complain about things that I actually did. Guys, it just helps if you watch the video before commenting. Seriously, it's like putting your pants on before you leave the house, or tying your shoes so you don't trip over them. Watch the video before you comment. That way you don't look stupid.
Nothing beats Kemper 10 years old hardware with no indication it would be significantly improved besides cosmetics. It works just fine, and with a profile package you can find more. What would you need more? Kemper Profiler amp is easily a guitar product of decade, century.
Well, I think we figured out who bought the Kemper and might be just a little bit threatened by the quad Cortex.
If you like the sound of your digital gear back in the 90s, chances are you will still like it today. It's not like computer graphics. Our ears like what our ears like.
And if you liked a lot of the digital gear from back in the 90s like this piece of shit, you probably need your fucking hearing checked!
Glenn's shootout demonstrated that they're so close, it's splitting hairs. I've owned lots of high-end amps, been a Fractal user for years, but hey, I think amps are sexy as hell too. But the convenience that goes along with a modeler just can't be beat. Flame if you must, but amps are dead.
Well, Dr. Prog Nerd, given that's your YouTube title, I can't really be surprised by that comment now, can I? Hey, I love real tube amps. I think they're fucking amazing, but there is definitely a convenience factor along the way there, and the whole I don't have to learn how to mic a cabinet and spend years perfecting my technique to get that. If you're into prefab metal, yeah, amp sims are your absolute way to go. If you want to find your own tone, yeah, probably still want to go the real mic up an amp kind of thing. There's definitely nothing wrong with either way, as long as you're okay with sounding exactly like everybody else. Amps aren't dead yet, but the technology will move forward. There'll always be a market for tube amps, like there's a market for vintage car collectors. But I think as more and more kids get into playing guitar and whatnot, you're going to see more and more kids just staying in the digital realm. I think it's absolutely inevitable. I mean, hey, I could be completely wrong. If you've got evidence otherwise, feel free to share.
Hey Glenn, have you ever recorded weird or exotic instruments with rock and metal bands? I've played didgeridoo with an amateur metal band for shits and giggles a few years ago, and it was really funny and a great experience, especially for the guitarists who needed to improvise with scales based on only one key and get out of their zone of comfort. Didgeridoo has only one key per instrument and uses a lot of harmonics with this key. The low droning percussive sound was great and really interesting for metal. Good experience. Do you have some stories with shit like that? Keep up the great work. You're the best.
Oh, dude, that's fucking awesome. You know, I remember seeing Steel Panther 4 or 5 years ago in Detroit, and the opening band was actually from Australia, and that's how they started the show. You know, they had, you know, these low droning sounds, and there was a guy on a fucking didgeridoo, and I'm like, okay, this is fucking cool. And that's the thing. Ethnic instruments can go a long way in spicing up your metal sound. I've done, 3-4 records with Protocol, and they're all Eastern European and Slavic descent, and they brought a lot of their traditional Slavic instruments into the mix. Kat, the female vocalist, she'd play recorder, but she'd also play psaltery and harp. And harp and metal is something I never got to do, so I love doing records like that. I love getting to mic all those different weird fucking instruments because it's challenging as an engineer and definitely breaks things up and makes things just a little bit different from your typical guitar, bass, and drums mix. Nothing wrong with that at all, but it's kind of cool to spice it up every now and then. I've got a bit of a background in recording Celtic music as well. For some strange reason, a lot of the Celtic bands liked coming to record in my studio, and I thought those were fun projects too, because we got to, mic up fiddles and bazookies and saturns and whistles and just have all kinds of fun, with the boron. That's the Irish hand drum. Those things are fucking cool, especially, they're made of lambskin, so they got a very different sound than, a typical rock drum, which has a plastic skin. Definitely different mic techniques and certainly all kinds of fun. If you're in a metal band and you want to find some kind of a different sound, yeah, get a boron and see if you can work that in one way or another, because those are fucking cool.
Glenn, when you record your guitars, do you tune them to pitch or do you use tempered tuning?
Hey, Bob, fantastic question. Tuning's something I'm very, very strict about when I'm working with bands, and I'll tune every take, maybe halfway through a take, and just to keep the guitars absolutely perfectly where they need to be. I've got an Evertune guitar. I've got an Evertune LTD. It's fantastic as well. That thing's just great to track with. But when it comes to tempered tunings, I'll do it depending on the tuning. If we're tuned standard, I'll probably tune to pitch, but if we're doing a drop D tuning, generally I'll drop the low E string, the D, maybe about 10 cents off the natural, because it makes better chords under the 12th fret, and that's basically where everybody's going to be playing. I mean, classical orchestras do this all the time. They won't tune perfect to pitch. They'll tune to make the instruments work a bit better with each other. So it's just that kind of principle applied to a metal type styling. If you're doing drop tuning, yeah, try dropping your lowest string about 10 cents down, and you'll find those one-finger chords are going to sound just a lot sweeter that way.
Glenn, what do you think about the idea of recording drums outdoors? I live in an area where I believe it would be possible to do that without neighbors complaining, and I think it'd be something interesting to try.
Dude, too bad you didn't live close to me, because I'd totally be down for trying out that session. I know Lenny Kravitz actually recorded some drums outside of one of his records. He was at some French chateau they rented out, and had this massive courtyard out back, and they did some drum recording outside, and I guess it turned out really fucking cool. The thing about recording drums outdoors is, yeah, you're not going to get a lot of those reflections, so you can space some mics out, get some awesome distance sounds going. Should be pretty fucking cool. The only thing is you're going to have to watch out for is, cars driving by, and wildlife can make some sounds as well, but that might be kind of a cool effect too. It's definitely worth investigating. I guarantee you're going to have an easier time getting great drum sounds outdoors than you will indoors, because you're not going to have to contend with all the interference of all the room reflections. That's one of the natures of the beast of recording in studios, is you're separating yourself from the outside world, but you're making it much more difficult. This is my theory anyway. It's going to be easier for you to record them outside, minus the interference. Very curious to see how that turns out. If you're still active in the Discord by the time you watch this, please make sure you update us all on that. I'm very curious to hear how that turns out.
Glenn, I'm currently in a state where I'm perfectly fine with how I'm recording electric guitars right now. I feel like I should get into recording acoustic guitar, and I was wondering which mic under $200 would be the best. I'm thinking of getting one of the Audio-Technica mics, AT2020 or 2035, AKG mics, or maybe the Lewitt LCT240 Pro. Just wondering for suggestions.
I'm a huge fan of the Lewitt brand. I've done a lot of work with them. I think their mics are outstanding, and their lower end ones are serious bang for the buck. They are legit mics for under $200. You cannot go wrong with the Lewitt stuff. Can't say enough good things about them. Get one of those.
Glenn, not sure if you'll see this, but here goes from a 50-year-old kid. Say someone like Metallica walks into your studio, humor me, they need to lay down some tracks, but are where they are. Do you go with the sound they already have forever and ever, or do you put your stink on it? Just curious how that works. Something sells, but you can push it further and freshen it up. It's almost like the albums are recorded before the band even plays. It all seems so repetitive.
Now the thing is, I've even thought about that. How would I ever approach a band like Metallica? And I mean, like, I think Metallica's biggest strength is their live show. So I'd probably want to do it live off the floor. Like, get the musicians standing around the drummer and fucking jam the living shit out of the songs. I mean, like, that's how they did the Black Album. There was a massive vibe on that record, and it sounded amazing. And if you can capture that again, why not do that? I think we need to bring that back, is get more musicians playing together and playing off each other, as opposed to, track by track and slicing and dicing and everything and making everything perfect, because it just fucking sucks that way. Bring back the rock and roll. Make it fun once again. Bring that fucking vibe back. Imperfect is perfectly fine.
Glenn! My Got Polio shirt showed up today. So happy that you made that one available again. I wasn't able to pick the one up first time you had them for sale. Can't wait to see how many anti-vaxxers get their nuts in a bunch about it. Thanks.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it, man. That was the whole purpose of that show, is to piss off the stupid people. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for coming back week after week. You guys fucking rule. Thanks again for watching, and I am fucking out of here.